Happy Friday, everybody, and season's greetings, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Has anybody out there watched that new South Park special? That shit was crazy.
I haven't. Just so
Wait,
you know.
are you about to hold on a second? We've never talked about this.
Here we go again.
You know, Dominic, since you apparently never watched anything in your life, have you ever watched South Park?
Yeah, I've watched South Park. Episodes of South Park. No particular order or sequence of South Park. But I have watched it. And for that, Noah, you cannot shit on me.
I feel like you're holding back some details. I feel like you haven't really watched it, you know?
I wouldn't say I'm a number one fan. That's all.
Like me.
Like you.
I was such a fan, I decided I wanted to look like Eric Cartman, not just watch the show anymore.
So if you guys didn't know, this is the comedy special edition of the Below Average Joe's.
Oh, yeah, we got some fights to talk about. It's Friday, as
I
said at the top, which means we're here to give you guys the MMA Weekend Preview. My name's Noah Baker. I'm joined, as always, by the one, the only, Dominic Salee.
Thank you. Yes.
How you feeling, Dominic?
Happy to be here, Noah. I'm excited. You know, we had the special episode on Wednesday. We got back into the kick of it after a week off. The Thanksgiving, we're digesting food, talking about meals and holiday traditions. Great episode if you haven't listened to it. But today, we're back in the saddle, a weekend preview for the first time in 2 weeks. We got some great fights from Bellator and the UFC, and we got some news to recap that we've missed. So I'm excited, Noah. What about yourself?
Today's sucked.
The day we're recording this sucked, right?
Yeah.
But this Friday's great. Yes.
Friday's fantastic. And the week, the weekend's here.
People listening in the morning are like, damn, what happened to Noah at 5 a.m.?
I'll just put it like this. For those of you that work in most environments, end of the month. That's all I got to say. End of the fucking month. Let's get into those fight announcements. How about
Here we
that?
go.
This is something to cheer me up.
Yes.
These are some gifts the UFC put under the tree a little early this year.
They did.
It starts February 26th. We got a twofer. We got a couple twofers.
These are on the same card.
I believe that main event, 5-rounder, Beneil Dariush goes 1-on-1 with Islam Makhachev. It's the fight that we kind of expected, that we were hoping for. And we're getting it 5 rounds in February. Dominic, what do you think about this one?
It's a great fight. It's the one, like you said, that we expected. Beneil, 7-fight win streak. Islam, 9-fight win streak. Someone's streak has to come to an end, unless there's a draw. I always like to throw that possibility out there. But I think this is a great fight, man. Beneil, a guy that is so slept on, so underrated, a very well-rounded fighter. I mean, he's good on the ground, good on the feet. He's not afraid to get into a slugfest and take some shots to give you some shots. Islam, on the other hand, this is a guy that he hasn't fought anyone with this type of style before, where just reckless abandon essentially is what Dariush has shown before to come in with. So I think this is a good test for Islam, and it's that one more win we kind of want to see him get before he gets in there to fight for a title. And for Beneil, his chance to earn a title shot as well. It's a fantastic fight, man. I'm very excited for it, and a 5-round main event kind of puts some icing on top of the cake.
Yeah, I don't really believe we're going to see a reckless abandon style for Dariush in this fight. I mean, you look at how composed he was against Tony Ferguson, and that is the fighter that would bring that style out. Obviously, Dariush has been in some firefights. He's been in some really fun wars in the past, but he made it very clear that if he wants to be serious about running for the title, or making a run at the title, I should say, that he needs to clean it up a little bit, even if that meant, taking the easy win against Tony Ferguson, going against what his instinct told him to do and fight the right fight. And, you can boo it all you want or say that fight sucked and we didn't like that fight, but Dariush won, and I'm glad he's getting this opportunity next. And he's going to be counted out here for sure. Islam Makhachev is, for better or worse, he's being basically looked at as like Khabib, almost like Khabib came out of retirement in some ways. This is kind of like what Islam Makhachev is being already crowned as the uncrowned champ of sorts. And I think that there's good reason for people to believe in Islam that highly, but also don't think it's very fair. I mean, life's not fair, right? End of the
Right.
month, whatever. but no, but I don't think it's I don't think it does justice to this matchup. You know, Islam getting a win here would be huge for his stock, and I do want to transition into a viewer question. We actually did have a question about this very fight. It came after our roundtable on Wednesday, so we're going to put it in here, Dominic. So are you ready for the question?
I'm ready. Yes.
So this viewer, who shall remain nameless, he mentioned that Dariush versus Makhachev is the fight that he is most excited for next year so far. So my question to you guys is, if Poirier versus Oliveira is a war and both have to take time off until, let's say, August, what are the odds that the winner of this Dariush versus Makhachev fight would jump Justin Gaethje and get the title shot?
Yeah, I read this a few times because I was confused when I initially read it. Then I read it again.
Really?
I'm like, yeah, but it took me a couple reads. You know, I haven't taken any language arts classes in a while. Noah gets me all the time for my spelling, so bear with me here. But this fight obviously is huge, and it is a number one contender fight. Except there's a number one contender already in Justin Gaethje. But if Oliveira Poirier is a war, which I think it will be. I don't know if it'll be a 5-round war, but it's going to be a war regardless. There is potential for the winner of that to need a prolonged layoff. But, you know, Justin has already kind of shown the UFC, the fans, that he's willing to wait for a title shot. And then he took a fight with Chandler anyway, won it, and clearly earned the title shot in our eyes. So I think he's going to be fine with waiting again. And I don't necessarily see the UFC throwing the winner of this fight over top of Gaethje. If anything, they would make the winner of this fight Gaethje in the meantime. But again, I still just don't see that long of a layoff all the way to August anyways. So Justin's going to go first, and then the winner of this will be next. It's an interesting kind of sequence of events to at least throw out there from our anonymous viewer. I think he goes by Dale sometimes. But yeah, I at the end of the day, I don't see the winner of this scotching Justin Gaethje for a title.
I think what's more likely, I'm just going to go, you know, no matter what we think, we haven't seen the fight yet, so it doesn't, who knows. But based off what he's asking, if let's say August is when the winner of Poirier Oliveira would be out till, or really both guys would be out till, I think that there's reason to believe that their UFC might do one of those shitty interim belts, and you do Justin Gaethje versus the winner of Makhachev Dariush for would it feel like it should happen? No, but you know, just because Oliveira or Poirier coming off a war hypothetically could be ready by August, maybe you want to give them a little more time, so you do an interim belt sometime in the summer, and then around, you know, November, October next year, then you know, do title versus title. The UFC loves doing the champ versus champ stuff. You got Gane and Ngannou about to do something like that. So I think that's more likely. But it is an interesting question to ask because the timing of this is very interesting because, you know, we've had this constant debate going on about if Justin Gaethje should be next, if Islam Makhachev should be next. And Gaethje just fought in November.
Right.
You got the title fight coming in like a week.
Yeah.
And then this fight's in February. So depending on when they book, when they're able to book Gaethje versus the winner of Poirier Oliveira, there is, you know, right now it felt like the majority opinion was on Gaethje being the number one contender. But who knows what's going to happen if, let's say, either one of those guys in February puts on like a hellacious one-sided performance. You know, if Makhachev does the Dariush, what similar fashion he did to Dan Hooker, a lot more people are going to start speaking up and saying, oh, Gaethje should have to fight someone else.
Yeah.
So that's how quickly the sport moves. I hope that fight would be booked before Dariush Makhachev happens.
Yeah.
Just so we can get a direction. But based off the hypothetical here, I think an interim belt would be more likely if that were the case.
Yep, I agree.
Moving on from there, also February 26th, a couple of up-and-comers here. Arman Tsarukyan, he's been looking for a big fight. Did he get it? Well, he got a big opponent, a guy who struggles to make 155 pounds.
Yeah.
That's Joel Alvarez, who I'm sorry to clown him like that right there, but back-to-back weight misses. This is really his last chance at 155 pounds for sure.
Well, for what it's worth, sorry, but Arman did tweet, no lightweights wanted to fight me, so I had to take a fight against a welterweight. So he was kind of taking the jabs at Alvarez too.
Yeah. So Joel Alvarez is great. He's coming off a very fantastic performance in his last bout. Arman Tsarukyan is a guy that really, outside of when he fought Islam, and that was even a relatively close fight, he's been perfect. So he's one of the next wave. Both these guys really are kind of in that next wave of lightweights. Before Joel Alvarez's last performance, he had really gone under the radar, even in comparison to Tsarukyan, who I wouldn't say is like some big prospect everybody's talking about, even though they should be.
Yeah.
So this is a fight that's probably going to go under the radar in comparison to what it really is. This fight is big. It's big in a lot of ways, and I hope that both guys can just make weight so we don't have any sort of, controversy,
right?
Because these are two of the most promising guys in this lightweight division that are really looking to earn that number next to their name, earn that big fight, and they're going to have to use each other to try to do it.
Amen to that. I can't even add on anything, Noah.
March 5th, another twofer. And I believe this is this the main? Did they say this is the main event for March 5th?
I don't know.
I don't think they've said, so I'm going to assume not. But we do get a really big fight, and a fight that I wouldn't say would be a bad main event, and that's in the featherweight division. Edson Barboza, coming off of his loss to Giga Chikadze, he looks to get back on track against Bryce Mitchell. Have y'all listened to that mixtape?
Darkensaw is one of the song names, I think.
But Bryce Mitchell, we haven't seen in like a year.
Time. Yeah.
We last saw him in a much improved striking form against who did he fight? The guy with all the tattoos.
Oh, crud. Let me pull it up.
Team Alpha Male.
I'm pulling it up.
Okay.
Pulling it up.
Regardless, even though Bryce Mitchell showed a lot of growth on the feet, I definitely think that there's some clear advantages for each guy in this fight. And it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle for Mitchell because he's going to depend strictly on getting this fight to the ground and trying to submit Barboza. But time has shown that unless you're a big guy, it's hard to really take down and hold down Edson Barboza. So I definitely don't think Mitchell's going to want anything to do with the feet. But I love this fight. Mitchell's been I've been wanting to see this guy get tested a little bit more. And now he gets to do it against one of the best in the division.
Yeah, that fight came against Andre Fili in October of 2020. So now this is going to be March of 2022. So a long layoff, as Noah alluded to with Bryce Mitchell. But he's coming back with a real tough test here. It's going to test his striking, and it's really going to show how good of a grappler he is if he can get Barboza down and hold him, as Noah said as well. And for Barboza, he's still hanging around, man. Like, if he can get this win, he's still right there amongst these top 10 guys, potentially with dreams of still reaching title contention status. That's a fantastic fight, and I wouldn't be upset if it's a main event either.
I know the Chikadze loss set him back, but number 9 does not do him justice. I mean, it might be accurate because, this featherweight division, it might not get the shine of the lightweights or the bantamweights, but it's just as
it's right there.
Honestly, it kind of has more. It seems like it has more on the back half. Like some of these guys on the back, Sadiq Yusuf and Bryce Mitchell. These guys show so much potential, but they're not yet in the top 10 for a lot of them.
Right.
Barboza is a clear. This is a clear, like, you win this and you're potentially knocking on the door of title contention, and that's a big step for Bryce Mitchell, who, up to this point, Andre Fili, good win, but he really is is a big step up. That's the way it'll be said.
Undoubtedly.
Also on March 5th, one of our newcomer of the year's contenders for 2021, Manon Fiorot. She's going to be back in action. Number 14 ranked right now, going up against the former title challenger, number 9, Jessica I. Dominic, you seem to be on board with this one. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I love this. I told you kind of this morning when you sent the DM on Twitter. I love the pacing at which the UFC is moving along, Manon and Casey O'Neill both. So they kind of had their cracks into the rankings with their most recent wins, and now they're getting pushed with the top 10 contenders. Jessica I here in this matchup, former title contender. Manon has just shown her unbelievable striking skill set, kind of a bit of a karate style in a way, but can do it all. I would like to see her get tested in like the clinch and grappling. Jessica I can definitely do that in terms of the clinch. I don't know more so on the ground if that'll happen. But she's one that likes to box as well and get into some firefights. Maybe she can at least show some adversity here to Manon that she hasn't really had to face yet. It's a tough fight, but one that if Manon can win, she's going to catapult herself right in there, man. I love these type of matchups for these two young ladies.
I'm going to apologize in advance because this might come off like I'm underestimating Jessica I, but I mean, this is complete slaughter fight being set up here. Oof. I mean, Jessica I is a girl that depends on her boxing, but she is yet to, I mean, you look at what happened when she went up against a very good striker in Valentina, who obviously the queen, the champion, and she got put into oblivion. I mean, Manon Fiorot is not, I mean, her striking is probably the next best that Jessica I's ever fought.
Yeah.
Jessica I does not have any other skills that she can really depend on. That I mean, she's not a grappler.
Yeah.
And you said she could test her in the clinch, but I mean, how long can you really do that and win a fight by holding someone in the clinch? You know, so, you know, I don't love it. I don't like this fight. I don't like it. I mean, I get it. You know, Jessica I is not really a lot of people's favorite fighter. I get it. But, you know, I just wonder if, you know, when I see these kind of fights being booked, you know, this reminds me a lot of like Matt Brown when he got booked against Miguel Baeza. It's like, I mean, these veterans, I get it. They got to fight somebody, but just this fight could get ugly quick. And it doesn't really tell me much about Manon, even if she does. Like, what are we really going to learn if she knocks out Jessica I mean, you might say that's impressive, but I mean, and it is impressive. It's just, it's not really what I need answered about her right now. Like, sure, that might get her into the top 10, but I want to see her face someone that's good on the ground.
Yeah.
Someone who will take that fight to her and not just let her play her distance game. And I just don't think Jessica I is the fighter to do that. It's going to be good for her to get a win over someone like that, to hop into the top 10 if she's able to do it. But maybe I'm counting out Jessica I, but I think there's a reason why after her lone title shot, she's kind of fallen off in a lot of ways.
Fair enough.
Last one.
Hey now.
March 26th, 5-rounder as well. Jan Blachowicz looks to reinsert himself into.
I love it.
Picture.
I love it.
Goes head to head with the other guy that's really looking to put himself in a similar situation. Kind of the guy that got left out with Yuri Prohaska appearing to be next for the title shot against Glover Teixeira, and that's Aleksandar Rakic. So Dominic, 1v2 here in the light heavyweight division. Are you on board with this? The timing of it, does it feel like enough time for Jan to get back in there and compete?
Yeah, I like this for Jan getting back in there because he's a guy that over the past 2 years, like as a champion, had longer layoffs, wasn't like the most active guy. So I'm liking that he's going to try and bounce back here. I know he got submitted, but it's not like he got knocked out or anything. Hopefully there's not too much damage. So a few months away now. This is a really hard fight for Jan, but I respect him for taking it and wanting to stay right there in title contention talks. And if Rakic isn't fighting Yuri, which obviously isn't going to happen now, then this was the next best thing for him. Yuri's going to obviously fight Glover Teixeira for the belt. Everything works out up there in the top 4 of the division, including the new champion Glover. Interesting fight. Rakic is an incredible kickboxer. Not the most aggressive guy, but he carries a lot of power, especially with his kicks. Can Jan withstand it? Can Jan grapple Rakic? I don't really know what's going to happen in this one, but I do like that it's a 5-round main event.
Yeah, truthfully, I mean, it's an obvious, clear-cut, this person, winner of this is next for a title, especially if it's Aleksandar Rakic. And I respect the hell out of Jan Blachowicz for just throwing himself back into the fire, and I don't think it by any means this is some sort of mismatch. I think Jan Blachowicz has proven, despite even the tough, one-sided fashion of that title loss, I think he proved on that title run, and even before that, how far he's come, and maybe what kind of skills he already had that we just hadn't really gotten to see. And even in the Adesanya fight, you look at how well he was able to wrestle in that fight. And while I don't know if that will really come into play against the bigger opponent in Aleksandar Rakic, I do think that if he's able to mix up his levels well, that could keep Rakic guessing. And Aleksandar Rakic is already a guy, like you said, not someone that presses on the gas too often. He definitely picks and chooses his shots very wisely, very meticulous with the shots he puts out there. And if you can force him into a state of where he is constantly guessing, that's only going to put his input even lower. So it's a really good fight, a lot of interesting variables, and March 26th, a ways away, but I think it's an appropriate time. Rakic has been out for a while too.
Yeah,
last time that's over a year for him, coming off that win against Anthony Smith. And honestly, I'm kind of glad Anthony Smith is not put with either one of these guys. I'm not opposed to Anthony Smith being back in the top of the heap. I didn't want to see him fight Rakic again. And, the Blachowicz fight could have worked, but I just think both guys are on different timetables right now with the recovery processes. So I'm glad this is the fight we're getting.
Yeah, I agree.
So after that, we're moving on to the PFL because their CEO, Peter Murray, had a lot to say about the PFL's future plans coming in 2022. He spoke with Awful announcing about those plans. A lot was laid out, Dominic. I'll let us just kind of talk about it as we can unveil it as we speak about it. But what stuck out to you from this interview, and are you optimistic about the PFL's 2022 or pessimistic? Haven't changed your thoughts? How you feeling about them?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm a big fan of the PFL, and what stuck out to me most, 30 plus live events. Sign me up for that, because you can go back on the record on the show and hear me and Noah discuss how we want to see more from the PFL, and that every couple months, just, they have a decent sized roster to do more than just once every 2 months with their a season that they do. So I'm excited to see more PFL. It's just more fights for us to cover on here. Curious to see if that'll kind of lead them to make some more bigger free agent signings going into 2022 as well. So that's what stood out to me most. I am optimistic for the future. One thing that I noticed here, and I'm sure you'll get into it too, with all these plans that were announced, there was no broadcast partner mentioned just yet. So I don't know if they're going to be back on ESPN, if they're going to move to TNT, as Noah's mentioned in the past, like One Championship has done, or maybe another option. But 30 plus live events definitely stood out to me the most, my friend.
Yeah, the one thing that I'm not in love with about that 30 plus events, don't get me wrong, I love that they want to be more active, but they mentioned pay-per-view.
Yep.
And I just look, the UFC does, I know the UFC is on pay-per-view a lot, and they do a great job for it, but they also have the roster, the talent to ask for that much money once a month.
Yep.
If PFL starts trying to charge, even if it's $30 or $20 or whatever for a few of their cards, it's going to be hard to really stomach that at times, I'm sure. Because at the end of the day, as much as we enjoy the PFL, Dominic, it's a B-tier MMA organization. So are we really going to be wanting to dish out that kind of money for events that, unless someone like, maybe if you have a Kayla Harrison on there or someone like that, which I'm sure they would do if they still have her around, but didn't love that. I do like some of these things. I think the PFL Challenger series is kind of interesting.
That's intriguing.
Definitely a ripoff of Dana White's Contender Series, but I think in some ways maybe it's just an homage. Maybe it's just an accepting that this is a really good format for building talent, or I shouldn't say building talent, for bringing talent in. And the PFL, while they might not be able to get near the prospects that the UFC has gotten, I think this is an interesting spotlight to flash on some guys that are maybe you'll see a lot of guys making their debuts on this show. You know,
100%.
So I love that they're at least trying to do some different things. They said this would run like for 8 weeks between March and April, I think. So sign me up for that. There was a lot of things. The splitting the championship up into 2 cards.
Hallelujah!
Thank God. I can't. I don't think I could sit for another 7-hour card.
Oh man.
Especially when it was one fight on an hour every hour, and you just get a lot of ads in between.
Split it up, 3 title fights on each card with some undercard stuff. That's the way to do it.
And the last one, the MMA Combine, I don't really know what to expect from that.
I know.
But again, I'm happy to see that they're being very ambitious, and
that's what they're known for.
I hope that they don't get too ambitious. I think that's kind of been a thing for them, that they haven't quite found the middle ground where it's like, be ambitious, but also don't go overboard.
Right.
You know, you look at like their what they do with their smart cage or whatever they call it. Yeah. There's a lot of stupid stuff with that, but I like the concept. So it's like you got to find the
middle ground.
Like, do I need to see the speed that each punch comes in? No. Just keep it simple, stupid. Kiss.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Me and Noah don't get many kisses.
Next up, what we missed. This is the last couple things here before we get into our fights. Starting with Dan Hooker.
Wow.
He
this one shocked me.
Very quickly came out and said he was considering dropping back to 145 pounds, a division he started in, a division that we've all been shocked that he even made at one point in time. And then very quickly he posted himself on a scale, 146 pounds, Dominic. So are you on board with this move? Are you thinking that this is going to be a good idea? And who do you maybe want to see Dan Hooker go up against first?
Yeah, man. This is interesting because I was shocked when I saw this. Not only just the soundbite of him, teasing it. I think it was with the Mac Life. He does like a podcast thing with them now once a week. Pub Talk, I think, is the name of it. Mm-hmm. But then he goes on and does basically like a mock weight cut for a fight, essentially. I know he's still over there in Vegas, if I'm not mistaken, at the UFC PI. So he's over there kind of getting his nutrition down and doing all of this with his family being there. I know the UFC brought his family out in his last fight. So this is an interesting move for Dan. One that I am on board with. If he's already shown that he can make it comfortably here, he looked good in the pictures he posted alongside with him making the weight. So I'm definitely intrigued. I would say he's arguably right there, obviously amongst top 15 contenders. He's been competing with the best of the best at lightweight for the past few years. I'd throw him right in with, I have to give him a top 10 guy. No, I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's a great move for him. If he doesn't see a future at lightweight, he's still a fan favorite. People love seeing him. He needs to bounce back. Maybe he thinks this is the proper career move at this point in his life. Maybe he makes a run for a title. I like it.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I mean, this guy he's pretty big lightweight.
He's so big.
And there was a reason why he didn't last at featherweight. He was gutting himself to make the weight. Mm-hmm. And I will say, in that you didn't see a ton of footage, but that test cut, he looked pretty good from what you could see, the angles you could see. He used to gut himself to get there, and then his chin wouldn't always hold up very well at that division. So from what we've seen so far, and I know he was a lot younger at featherweight, he is shown to be a much better lightweight fighter than a featherweight fighter. But with that being said, I don't have any proof that him going back there is going to be a bad move. Look at Edson Barboza, who I thought that was the worst idea in the world, and he really has kept a good thing going down there. But I mean, if he would have beat Giga, he was probably one fight away from a title shot potentially. So
yeah,
I'm excited. I think it's probably good to get out of the lightweight division for now. He kind of found himself as a man with no home after a couple tough losses. I'm not opposed to a top 10 opponent. A name that stuck out to me, not top 10, but Sadiq Yusuf, both guys coming off losses. And you know what a fan you are of Sadiq Yusuf, a guy who is very big in that featherweight division as well.
Yeah.
Very powerful guy. And Dan Hooker being the older, more experienced fighter. I think that could be a fireworks matchup for sure.
Yeah, man.
Also, Kevin Lee We last heard about him for his USADA violation due to ADHD medication. Is that right?
Yeah, Adderall.
Adderall, that's right. He was released by the UFC this week. Are you surprised by this news? And maybe if you want to, after that, talk about maybe where you think he's going next.
It was surprising, I guess. I mean, he was serving a suspension, so it's up in February. So I just assumed he was going to ride that out and then he'd have a fight booked. But no, the UFC cuts him during his suspension. Surprising, but at the same time, I saw this tweet. I think I sent it to you guys. He was 9-2 at one point, and in his last 7 fights, he's won 2 or something like that, which is just so crazy to me. We've always been 2 guys that believed in the potential of Kevin Lee, but we were always pessimistic if he could put it all together to reach where that potential could take him, I guess is the best way to put it. And now, man, he's out of the UFC. The good news is he's still very young. I think he's not even 30 yet, or he's right
29.
around 29. So still young, right there in his prime. Hopefully he gets the suspension served up. I know he was on the MMA Hour with Ariel, and I think he said 3 organizations have already reached out to him, one being Eagle FC, which is Habib's organization, which, fun fact, is coming to America for 10 events next year.
I probably should have put that on this episode as well. I didn't think about it.
Yeah, so Habib, I guess, has had his people reach out to Kevin Lee immediately. So that would be interesting. We haven't really got to watch Eagle FC yet. It could make an appearance on Regional Showcase, obviously, especially in America if they come here next year. But yeah, I mean, Bellator, PFL, Kevin Lee fits in at these places. Weight class, let's figure that out, I guess. But I still think in terms of his skill set, he does fit anywhere. And I think we're going to see him make some decent noise wherever he chooses to end up.
Yeah, I'm only surprised by the timing. I'm surprised that it was the USADA violation, considering which I'm not saying that's the reason he got cut, but I'm surprised that was really even. I mean, I'm assuming that had something to do with him being cut. Maybe it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I felt like we were already kind of wondering what was next for him after his last loss to Daniel Rodriguez. He goes up after kind of being a guy that couldn't decide if he was a 155-pounder or 170-pounder, making one more shot, a re-debut at 170 pounds after a long layoff. And he loses. Looks kind of flat, really, for the most part. So I kind of it wouldn't have surprised me as much if he had gotten cut after that performance. But for it to happen, this far out, a little surprising.
Yeah.
But, I'm not – Kevin Lee is still very talented. There's just certain things that he's got to get worked out. And the first of which is figuring out what weight class he's in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 155 pounds would be ideal, but if you can't make the weight and remain in decent health, I don't think he's a poor 170 pounder.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was at least yes, I know he's 0-2 at 170 pounds in the UFC, but he went up against Daniel Rodriguez and RDA, who are great fighters. I would be very interested to see him in the PFL. We just talked about the PFL. That's the promotion. The PFL, they're looking to get on a new network or remain at ESPN, whatever. But, a guy like Kevin Lee does have kind of some star power. He hasn't really – not that he's selling multi-million-dollar pay-per-views, but he has that potential of a guy who could be a decent star for a promotion like that. So I would love if the PFL signed him. And, maybe this – I don't know the logistics of pulling something like this off, so take this with a grain of salt. But PFL is the one promotion that invested in a 155-pound division. Why not they be the one promotion to invest in a 165-pound men's division?
Yeah, true.
I know that would change some things. You probably wouldn't do 170. You'd probably do 175 or something. But I'm just saying, Kevin Lee I think he's a big enough name to where maybe you would try to build something around him because you hope that it pays off for you in the long run. I hope the best for him. I think, I haven't heard much about Bellator and him. I don't know if that's just not really on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Triller apparently has been calling, and don't get me wrong. I wasn't a hater on the Triad Combat like Dominic just kind of did, but
I just had a frog in my throat.
But I mean, Triller, yeah.
There it is. There's Noah.
It's I wouldn't be opposed to seeing him in the triangle ring, but it's just the fact that he would have to be doing business with Triller, who I just don't really trust. Is more so the backside of that one.
But yeah.
I thought maybe you were going to say something else.
Oh, no. Sorry.
Okay, so moving on from there, Bellator 272 happens this Friday. That's right. To be the champ, you have to beat the champ. The wise words of Ric Flair and many others. Sergio Pettis, the current Bellator bantamweight champion, goes one-on-one with Kyoji Horiguchi, who is making his second ever appearance in a Bellator cage, the first of which was for that Bellator bantamweight title, a fight that he won, never got the chance to defend the belt due to injuries and the time of layoff, and was actually still under contract with Ryzen, so then he continued to just be so dominant, and Ryzen didn't come back, and now here's a chance for him to start fresh here in Bellator. And Dominic, this headline, I love it because it's got a double meaning. To be the champ, you have to beat the champ. You think that's just Horiguchi feeling like I got to beat the champion, Sergio Pettis, to take back what I believe is mine.
Right.
Horiguchi, that is. But both guys have this mindset going into the cage Friday. Sergio Pettis, who had an amazing performance against Juan Archuleta, the long-standing bantamweight champion of Bellator. But he keeps saying he doesn't feel like the champion because the lineal champion, which is Horiguchi, the guy that he feels is the man to beat inside of a Bellator cage in this bantamweight division, he said he will not feel like the champ until he beats him. So you get this case, Dominic, of two guys with a similar mindset. I think this fight is fireworks. Actually, I am going to say it. It's my fight of the weekend. As much as I love Font and Aldo, and we're going to get to that, it's my favorite fight this weekend is Pettis and Horiguchi. Sergio Pettis, there's so many storylines that you could really make from this. I mean, Sergio Pettis still trying to get out of the shadow of his older brother, Anthony, and does it by winning a belt, but then he still hasn't quite did it yet, He's still kind of being held back and by different elements, Horiguchi being the lineal champion and things like that. It's a tough title defense. For your first title defense, considering all those elements, all that pressure, there's a lot going against Sergio coming in here, but he's obviously very motivated. I like the mindset of, even just because he has the gold wrapped around his waist, and he is the real champion. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I'm not saying he isn't. But I believe him when he says he doesn't feel like it. And he's just as hungry as those challengers, which is a dangerous recipe.
Yeah, I agree, man. Sorry.
Nope,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
This is just an incredible fight, right? It's between two super well-rounded, fantastic martial artists in their prime. Horiguchi won that one fight in Bellator, gets injured, but he's been in Ryzen since then. I think he went 1-1 in his two fights since his Bellator, but now he's back. Looking to reclaim that belt, as Noah alluded to, a guy that loves to finish fights. He's been around for so long. 29-3 is his record. This dude is no joke. And then obviously for Sergio, he's looked like essentially a career resurgence ever since he came to Bellator. He was a flyweight in the UFC. I can't remember if he dabbled in bantamweight or not in the UFC, but obviously here in Bellator, he's a 135er. He's 3-0, won the championship against Archuleta, and he's looked great every step of the way in doing so. And this is really that huge test to kind of take him to that next level, to be put up there next to his brother Anthony Pettis in terms of his name. And what can he go on to do here in Bellator? Will he ever kind of venture out, try and take a crown back at UFC as well? I mean, this kid has a bright future ahead of him, only 28 years old. This is a fantastic title fight. No, a big card overall for Bellator, and it can't be capped off by much better of a main event.
Yeah, both guys have something that the other wants. Horiguchi sees that big gold belt. And he says, I want that back. Sergio Pettis looks at the respect, the pedestal that Horiguchi has put himself on, or has as the peers have put him on, and says, I want that. He's the kid that's always been in the shadow. He's always been the one in the background. He's always been the support. He's never been the leader. And now he has a chance to really kind of throw all that away and be like the phoenix flying out of the ashes.
I like it.
So I think it's a great fight. Obviously, that a lot of what I just said, that these are a lot of like intangibles. These aren't actual fight styles, but you're getting two of the most well-rounded guys in the world, and no matter where the fight goes, I think it's going to be a thrilling. I would like to think this fight goes all 5, or 3, right? They do 5 rounds.
This is a title fight, so it's 5. Yeah.
I don't know why I'm blanking on that, but
should be fast-paced too, man. A lot going on,
I just think there's a lot riding on this fight. The poster, by the way, is one of the sickest posters I've ever seen. Have you seen that poster of Horiguchi?
The one with the black in the middle?
Statue of Liberty.
Oh, no, I have not seen that.
Oh, we're definitely putting that on the thumbnail for tomorrow. So
I'm glad you brought it up. I have to look for it.
That poster is so sick. It's an amazing fight. Let's move on to the UFC, though, in the meantime.
Sounds good.
Rob Font versus Jose Aldo.
Well.
Or Full versus NT
He's been waiting to do this, guys.
Now, Dominic, did you have anything you wanted to share with the class?
I think it's a pretty cool poster, guys. But I get the argument for Fall versus Antito. I will agree with everyone that the font, no pun intended, is not the best choosing of the poster, but everything else about it's cool.
I do like the look outside of that, but it is funny. Dominic, whenever he's the one that sends a poster, he typically does it before there's any opinion out on it. Like, I remember he told me he liked the Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum poster, and that's maybe the worst. That might be the worst poster that's ever been created.
Smith's fan
fight promotion ever. So, yeah, that tells you anything about Dominic. The man is very positive. Font versus Aldo. Now I'm struggling to say their names correctly. So, yeah. So let's talk about this bantamweight division off the top, because I know we've talked about it a lot recently, but you have Peter Yan, who's now your interim champion. It looks like he's going to be fighting Aljamain Sterling next, I assume. Who is the current bantamweight champion. You got TJ Dillashaw, who got a win in his comeback fight over Corey Sandhagen, over the summer, but then he's dealing with the knee injury, so he's kind of out for a while. And then Corey Sandhagen has now lost back-to-back fights to TJ Dillashaw and then Peter Yan, so he's kind of out of the title picture for the time being. So now Font versus Aldo, two of the guys that have been a bit overlooked in terms of how far they can really get in this division, and whether by luck or by misfortune of their opponents around them, Font and Aldo find themselves in a prime position to make a statement here, and potentially, maybe, just maybe, the winner here could say, "No, not so fast, TJ." Maybe they're next. Maybe they're next after that.
Yeah,
so
man.
What do you think of the fight?
This is a great fight, obviously. I mean, Rob Font, by the way, is one of the most underrated talents, and I think the entire UFC right now. And he's finally starting to get respect, especially after his great 5-round performance against Cody Garbrandt. He's on a 4-fight win streak. He's 9-3 in the UFC. The guy's been winning for years and years, and now is his prime time. As Noah said, he's ranked number 4, Jose Aldo number 5, his chance to take out a legend. And who would have thought that Jose Aldo, the former featherweight king, the 10-year unbeaten streak, he loses his belt to Max, he has a skid at featherweight, comes down to bantamweight, has a good performance against Marlon Moraes, but technically loses. So he was on a 3-fight losing streak at one time, and it looked like, maybe there's just not much light left at the end of the tunnel for Aldo. And here he is now off of 2 back-to-back great performances, potentially a win away from a title, getting a chance to maybe become a 2-weight world champion for the UFC. Crazy to see that Jose Aldo is at this stage of his career after all of this time and all these fights. And one of the craziest things in this fight is that, like I said, Rob Font is 34. Jose Aldo is only 35. Aldo has been in this game since he was a wee lad, and he's still at the top of the top, the creme de la creme. I think it's going to be a fantastic fight, a stand-up back-and-forth war. Rob Font with the New England Cartel, Calvin Kattar, a fantastic boxer, Jose Aldo, a Swiss Army knife on the feet, his body work, his calf kicks. This is a fantastic bantamweight main event, Noah.
Yeah, that's really the battle here. Is Rob Font's going to be very heavy on the boxing pressure early, and we know how good Aldo's body work, his leg kicks are, but this could turn into a bit of a race. And if it does, we know one of the knocks on Aldo through his whole career, he's never had the best cardio.
Yep.
And I have no doubt that a guy like Rob Font will be able to go that full 25 minutes. He did it against Cody Garbrandt and looked pretty unfazed by it, if I'm being honest. So this could get into a war of nutrition. I think that's the phrasing that gets used typically. If so, I think it's a tough fight as the rounds go on for Aldo. So if you're Jose Aldo, you look to try to get a big lead or put him away early. You can't put him away. I mean, obviously, in order to put him away, you're going to have to exert a lot of energy. So there's not a perfect recipe here. But
right,
I say you try to get a lead early and do as best you can to play defense in the later rounds and try to pull out a win that way. I'm not saying that he can't be done. It's a great fight, but it's one that, we're going to find out a lot about Rob Font in this fight. I feel very good about. I know who Jose Aldo is. He's one of the best fighters in UFC history, but he's also maybe a step less than that at this point. He's a contender by any stretch of the imagination. He is a contender, but maybe not champion level. Rob Font is still, even coming off a great performance against Cody Garbrandt, it's just still unclear. What do we really have in Rob Font? It's very clear by what you said. You really believe in his talent, and I think that's great. I think for good reason. But a win against Aldo in any fashion, I think, could answer a lot of questions, even more than it might have against Cody Garbrandt, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I agree, man. This is a huge test for him, and it's one, too, where you were kind of comparing the cardio from both guys. I was really struggling to make a lot of predictions and picks for this whole UFC card, and this one especially because I'm like, okay, I know Rob Font can go the distance and look good for 5 rounds. Jose's not the best in the late rounds, but can he finish? I don't see this going 5 rounds. I think there's going to be a finish regardless. I think there's either an early finish for Aldo due to his pressure and his power, or a prolonged kind of pick your shot with Rob Font, get the late finish in the 3rd, 4th, maybe even 5th round. Again, man, just a striking chess match. Who's going to get the upper hand? That's what it comes down to.
Let's get into the rest, and we're going to actually go back to Bellator for a second. Co-main event, 2 top 10, Emmanuel Sanchez and Jeremy Kennedy. What are your thoughts on this one, Dominic?
This is a big fight for Emmanuel Sanchez to bounce back because he's on that 2-fight skid. He was in the lightweight Grand Prix down there, obviously in Bellator, lost to Patricio Pitbull. I think that was his most recent loss, or I think he had one more after that one. But anyway, he's on a skid, and it's a guy that really is essentially almost had his whole career in Bellator. He's 12-5. He's been in there with tough guys. He gets his fair share of finishes, but he likes to go the distance as well. But Jeremy, he's kind of lesser known in this one. He's only had 2 fights in Bellator. He's 16-3, though, a solid record, only 29. It's kind of just like the guy that's been in there and done that in Bellator, and then the newer guy, and who's going to kind of assert their dominance in a sense, because it's number 4 versus number 9. Jeremy Kennedy, obviously, this is going to be the biggest test of his career, but if he beats Sanchez, a guy that's been in there with Patricio Pitbull, and especially with the top of this division right now, the way it is, with the belt being vacated and then Patrici wins it, he can kind of make a case for a title shot potentially, especially if he comes in and puts on an absolutely dominant performance, man. It should be an intriguing fight, but one that I don't really know which way I want to lean or how it will result.
Yeah, Jeremy Kennedy's an interesting guy because he's 1-1 in Bellator, but he came in with a lot of success outside of Bellator. Had a nice run in the PFL in 2019, went 3-1 in the UFC back in the day, with his lone loss being to the current featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. So the more you know.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Obviously that loss to Adam Borix is tough. Maybe to some they might think, oh, there's kind of a ceiling to how good this guy can really be in this promotion. I don't really see it that way. He's 29 years old. He's getting better every time he goes in there. And he goes up against Emmanuel Sanchez, who, Emmanuel Sanchez is a dog. He's definitely a competitor. He's a guy that, whether it seems like the only guy that he really seems to have a ton of trouble with is Patricio Pitbull. He's got 2 losses to him. Besides that, he's really just lost to the best of the best at the time in Bellator. It just seems like he's almost like the Joseph Benavidez of Bellator. He's a guy who has always at the top, but never the top. Different fighters have come through and kind of staked their claim at the top of the division, and he's never been able to do it. He still has a chance to get to that level, but coming off back-to-back losses, Patricio, Mads Burnell in the last one, it's back to the drawing board, and that's why he's fighting number 9 now. So I don't think it's an easy fight by any means, because I think Jeremy Kennedy does have a ton of potential, but it's a necessary step if he really wants to rebuild what he kind of lost there early on.
Yeah, exactly.
Also on this Bellator card, number 5, Johnny Eblen. This is in the middleweight division, I believe, going up against Colin Huckbody. Interesting fight here because Colin Huckbody, we know a little bit about. He fought on the Contender Series for the UFC last year, got a contract, but Dominic got released before he ever made his debut. What do you expect from this one?
This is interesting because of we've seen Huckbody and that he's literally impressed the boss man, Dana White from the UFC, earned a contract there, gets released. I'd love to know more of a backstory on why that happened. No, I think you even said off recording he had a fight scheduled, it got canceled, then he got cut. So I'd love to know a backstory there. If anybody knows, let us know in the comments or leave a voice message. But, he's a good fighter, man. He's got a lot of finishes. He's young, only 27. But Johnny Eblen, he's 9-0, Noah. And he's 5-0 in Bellator. He's got 5 finishes, all 5 of them in the first round, and he's only 29 years old. He's 6'3". He's a massive guy, ranked number 5 in the division. Interesting that he's fighting a Bellator debutant here in Huckbody, someone that is unranked, obviously, and just starting out in the promotion. I don't know kind of how this matchmaking came about. Bellator kind of does this every so often. But I really think Johnny Eblen here, it's kind of made for him to win. But Huckbody could come in, make a statement, and boom, you're exploded right into the top 5 of the middleweight division. Should be a fun fight. I'm very much intrigued to see if Huckbody can kind of prove the UFC wrong in this one and right the ship in Bellator.
Man, you really think so? I think this is a more even fight than we're thinking, because Huckbody's making his debut.
Yeah.
This is a guy that was looked at as UFC caliber, but unfortunately got cut for some reason before making his debut. Had a great performance on the Contender Series. And he comes in here, yes, it's number 5 guy in the middleweight division, but I think Huckbody could very well be in that at that level. So I actually like this matchmaking from the sense of, if you think he's that good, go ahead and see what you got.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who's remained, he's been active. He's fought a lot, had a lot of good performances. I don't see. I see this being a pretty statement win one way or another, so it could very well just be kind of another statement for Johnny Eblen as he's looking to kind of get a bigger matchup. But I don't know, man. I think that there's some potential for the upset here from Colin Huckbody, if I'm being honest.
I like it, Noah. Real spicy.
Just wanted to mention for Bellator, this is just probably one of their best card of the year, I would say. A couple other names to look out for that me and Dominic are fans of. Kai Kamaka III, a guy who never was able to really get his footing in the UFC, but I still think that guy has a lot of potential. And Spike Carlisle, our man.
That's right.
That guy is tailor-made for television fights. And
I agree.
He gets to be on Showtime, and it's the second fight of the evening. So make sure to tune in early to see Spike Carlisle. Now,
Spike.
Back to the UFC. We do have a few more fights to talk about. Co-main event. This fight's gone under the radar, and it really shouldn't, because Brad Riddell and Rafael Fiziev, 2 elite strikers, go head-to-head. Dominic, who's striking comes out on top?
Buddy, that's a fantastic question. Brad Riddell, professional kickboxer, right? Before MMA, if I'm not mistaken. So he's been incredible, man. He's on a 7-fight win streak. He's 4-0 in the UFC. Rafael Fiziev just cracked into the top 15 after his most recent win against Bobby King Green. He is on a 4-fight win streak. He's 4-1 in the UFC. They're both 10-1. This fight is so badass. No, it's going to be such an absolute back and forth war. It's not going to be boring. I absolutely promise you that. And if it is, I'm going to be very sad on Monday's episode when we recap this fight. But yeah, this is one that's made for one of these two guys are going to come out and make a statement and really solidify themselves as kind of the next up in the lightweight division, because this is obviously the best division in all of the UFC, potentially in all of mixed martial arts, right? But this is these two guys, that new wave. They're coming in. We're so used to all these guys in kind of the 1 through 10 range, veterans, some newer guys, but pretty experienced at the same time. Then this is that new fresh blood, man. And I look for a big statement win, a big statement finish from one of these guys. I'm just curious to see who it's going to be.
Yeah, it's hard for me to predict the finish. I mean, both these guys, Fiziev, I believe, did get finished in his one UFC loss. But, these guys, man, they both just go to war. And both of their last fights, that's all you have to look at.
I know.
Brad Riddell against Drew Dober, Fiziev against Bobby Green, two of the most underrated fights of the year. And both look fantastic. I will say, it seems like Fiziev sometimes his opponents he seems to almost face like the best version of his opponents a lot.
Yeah.
Bobby Green was kind of looked at as like a bit of a stepping stone, and he proved to be more than that in that fight. He nearly won that fight against Fiziev. Brad Riddell just seems to have had a much easier time getting through his competition, even with like the war against Drew Dober, like I said.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's really a way to kind of go one way or another. I think Fiziev is a bit more battle tested. I think he's faced more adversity. I love his striking. It's so powerful. Mm-hmm. While I think Brad Riddell does a great job of mixing it up. He does a lot of kicks along with the punches as well. And this fight's, I mean, it's a perfect co-main event. It's under the radar, but I think they're going to deliver big on ESPN Saturday.
Yeah, I'm glad they're getting the opportunity to be that co-main slot, man.
And, that kind of fight that we just said, you could just copy and paste those kind of thoughts here, But in the light heavyweight division, Jimmy Crute, Jamal Hill, both coming off of having their limbs not in the places they were supposed to be on their body.
Yeah.
And I guess that's for lack of a better word, that is a way of saying they're coming off of kind of the biggest adversity they faced so far in their career, both coming off losses. For Jamal Hill, that might be his first professional loss. It's his first in the UFC for sure. Jimmy Crute, not quite his first loss, but considering he was going up against Anthony Smith, who's a top 10 opponent, it's a tough one to swallow, especially in the fashion that it happened. So coming in here, Dominic, is there anything for either one of these guys? Is there going to be any head games here, any mind games, anything where you have to kind of psych yourself back into being in the octagon for two young guys who are just really looking to bounce back, but maybe afraid of what another loss could do to derail their career?
I think both these guys are going to come in hungrier than ever. Again, like Noah said, copy and paste from the last one. This is that next wave, the new wave of the light heavyweight division. And this one, it's much easier to make a splash because the division is not as stacked as the lightweight division is. Jimmy Crute has shown more of a finishing prowess and a more weaponry in getting those finishes. Jamal Hill, on the other hand, has 4 of his 8 wins via KO TKO, but he has shown that he can go the distance and grind out wins as well. So we haven't really seen that as much from Jimmy Crute, especially in the UFC. So both guys have shown us different things. They're incredibly talented. 25 years old for Jimmy Crute, which is still mind-blowing to me that he's only 25 and already has 6 fights in the UFC. And then Jamal Hill, he's 30. They're both from the Contender Series, so you know how Dana loves those Contender Series fellas. These are two of the biggest names he's had from that show in terms of kind of the splashes they've made so far in their young careers. It's an amazing fight, man, and another one where, regardless of who comes out on top, there's going to be a statement made. I just can't help but think that in both of these, where they're just going to be super fun, fan-friendly, and something's going to be made out of the winners.
I think there's a lot at stake in this fight. I don't know why, but I get the feeling that, both these guys' losses, their previous fights, were in very high-profile fashion, considering, Jamal Hill, his arm was like dangling in the wind as he got elbowed in the face, while Jimmy Crute, had the weird
Spaghetti
ankle
legs.
rolling. Yeah, Anthony Smith doing a great job on those calf kicks, I guess is what I should be saying. The only thing that Jimmy Crute should be thankful for, I guess, is that he was on the same card as Chris Weidman, who broke his leg in half. So I do think there's a lot at stake for that reason, because another loss here, and there's going to be a lot of question marks about what that guy's future in this division will really be, what his ceiling truly is. While I think both these guys have a lot of potential, I think they've proven that they're very talented already. I just think that the UFC is going to back one of these guys in terms of pushing them forward and really trying to make them kind of a contender in the light heavyweight division. And it's going to be whoever comes out on top. That's the best way I can put it.
Yep. I was just about to ask you that, because we've had these before and you've said that exact same statement there, but you clarified it. One of them is going to be pushed. The other will mingle. That's just how it is.
Mm-hmm. Following that, Brendan Allen gets a short notice replacement. And it's a guy who was making this back-to-back short notice spots here. As Chris Curtis comes back a month since his debut in the UFC, where he knocked out Phil Hall's big underdog win there. Can he make it 2 in a row here against Brendan Allen, Dominic?
Hey, this is my fight of the night pick. I love this fight. I love Brendan Allen. And I love Chris Curtis, and you guys have heard me rant on and on about Chris Curtis, and the journey that he's had to go through to get into the UFC is just crazy.
This guy's retired like 3 times in his career.
He's retired 3 times. He's been in the PFL. He's done everything. He won on the Contender Series, didn't get a contract. It's just nuts. And now he's 34, so time is not on his side, whereas Brendan Allen is only 25 years old, and this is going to be his 7th UFC fight already. He's 5-1. Another Contender Series guy. I love when all that blue comes up when Dana does his video on Twitter for the week. But this is going to be such a fun fight. Brendan Allen is as well-rounded as they come. Another guy that I think people believe in his skill set, but still feels underrated to me at the same time. But I've always been high on this kid, especially at the young age and all the experience that he's had with very top-notch competition. Chris Curtis, he's got 35 professional fights, man, and he's just looking to make a name for himself because he probably realizes I don't have that much time, so I need to come in. I need to make statements. In that fight with Phil Hawes, he faced a lot of adversity. Phil Hawes was having damn near one of the best performances of his career until he wasn't. And Chris Curtis showed he's got the power, man, in his hands, and that's all it takes. So Brendan Allen's going to have to be careful in this one. A very fun fight again. My fight of the night prediction is this one.
I'm surprised by that, but I like that pick. I do. I think it's an uphill battle once again for Chris Curtis. Obviously, a code he has cracked once already.
Mm-hmm.
But I respect what he's trying to do here. He's, his kind of mindset. When I heard him talk on the MMA Hour, I don't know. He doesn't seem to be necessarily like mind all on that title or something. His goal was to get to the UFC. He had an opportunity to do so, and he's just trying to make the most of it while he can.
Yep.
And I just have a lot of respect for that. A guy who just kind of just lives in the moment a little bit. And, taking fights like this isn't easy. Going up against Phil Hawes.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the bigger up-and-comers in the division, and you knock him out, and then you follow it up by going short notice again against Brendan Allen when you could have very well have waited and gotten maybe a top 15 opponent. I respect the hell out of that. And for Brendan Allen, he had to accept this fight, and that's no easy task as well. And, Brendan Allen has been almost the opposite, where you can tell by the way he talks how much he's focused on his legacy and really wanting to be a long-standing champion. So they kind of have different mindset here. I think Brendan Allen's would lead to a lot more pressure to be put on himself, but that doesn't mean that he is unable to overcome that. He's done it already in his career.
Right.
I just think that maybe some people counted him out after his loss to Sean Strickland, but look at what Sean Strickland has accomplished since then, and shows that loss was the one that, while Brendan Allen will say shouldn't have happened, it doesn't look near as bad in hindsight. So I think it's a great fight. 2 guys that show a lot of promise for differing reasons, and
Yeah,
I look to just have fun with this one. I want to live in the moment with this fight.
I feel it. I feel it.
But unfortunately, before that, loser leaves the brand.
Ah,
Coconut Bombs is here, and he's ready to go. I don't know. I was gonna try to make a rhyme there, but it wasn't happening.
I respect
Mackie
your attempt.
Patolo goes 1-on-1 with Sid from Toy Story. Dusko.
Ah, there it is.
So the battle of the brains here, and I love both these fighters. I think both these guys' records don't do them justice. I believe Mackie Patolo's 1-4, and I think Dusko is 1-3.
1-2.
1-2. So I think for Mackie specifically, a loss here, and it's going to be hard to really, keep you around. Dusko, I think, has a chance. He's still young enough and talented enough to a loss. You're 1-3. That sucks, but maybe they'd keep him around. But I'm going to look at it like loser leaves the brand. Both guys coming in here feeling the pressure, coming off of losses. But here's the difference. Dusko, despite the fact that I would say Todorovic would have the higher ceiling of these two guys, I would say he had the more hype of the two guys in this contest. I would also say he has lost his fights in more clear fashion than Mackie Patolo. We shouldn't forget, Mackie Patolo was beating clearly for the majority of 3 rounds Julian Marquez before getting caught in a submission. So that's why I think both these guys are going to be overlooked, underrated, win or lose here. But I do think it's worth noting that even though I do think Todorovic maybe has the higher ceiling long term if they want to invest in him, I think he's a very talented striker and could very well make his way into a top 15 level fighter. Mackie Patolo's got a lot of those intangibles that I talk about. He's got the experience on his side, and he is quite a grinder when you really get down to it. I think it's a very interesting fight for that reason. And when you have two guys with a lot of pressure who backs against the wall, I tend to look at the mindset of a Mackie Patolo, at least what I kind of presume his mindset to be the one that's going to show up. So Todorovic just has to fight those variables, but do you think he's capable of doing it?
He's definitely capable. I mean, Dusko's an incredible striker that carries a lot of power, and Mackie has shown that he can not necessarily be knocked out, but he can be caught. Like Marquez at least caught him in that fight, but he just went back to the grappling, and that's what was winning him those rounds until the submission happened. Mackie has just showed us more of a well-rounded skill set in the UFC so far. So, I definitely lean toward Mackie the more this fight goes on, if it gets into the second, the third round. And even though he did get tired in that fight with Marquez, he's very strong physically and just a big presence. So if he can just hold Dusko on in that third round if he has to against the cage or on the ground, Dusko's not really had to be tested with his grappling. And I think it's going to happen here in this one. Again, Dusko can pass the test. He has the power to do so. But both guys, as you said, no, loser leaves the brand. A lot at stake for both.
Yeah, by the way, this is my fight of the night pick, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I like that.
Last one, Manel Cape and Zhalgas Zhumagulov. Zhumagulov. There we go.
There you go.
The battle of flyweights. Once again, you got a couple guys who have had an iffy run of sorts, but both, I think, more talented than their records will show. Manel Cape, the former Ryzen champion, he's had a tough run. He is coming off a win in a highlight reel fashion, but one where he missed weight. Yes. And then he had 2 losses previous to that. One against Pantoja, who we know is fantastic, but also followed that up with a loss. Who did he lose to after that? It was I'm not going to remember.
He had a split. Name. It was a split decision.
Yeah, it was a really good fight. I forget the guy's name. I shouldn't forget his name, but I apologize. While Zhumagulov has actually had kind of a similar path. He's 1-2. He lost a split decision to who is Sean O'Malley fighting?
Raulian Paiva when he was at flyweight.
Yeah, so he lost a split decision to Paiva, and it's a fight that most say that Zhalgas probably won. So he's kind of one of those guys that could very easily be on the up and up, 2-1.
Yeah. If
a judge scores it that way. Instead, he finds himself with kind of a middling flyweight right now. This is going to be one of those fights, like I've mentioned multiple times before. While these aren't necessarily prospects, I think the winner of this fight has a very big ceiling in this flyweight division. Obviously, it's not the most stacked division in terms of names. There's quite a bit less, so there's less people to have to go through. But Manel Cape is kind of the obvious one. He's a former champion, a guy that came in with a lot of pedigree. But I think Zalgaz has shown that he is quite talented in his own right, and consistency has been on his side. That is something Manel Cape has severely lacked, whether it's been in the cage or his preparation outside the cage. So can he put it all together here? That's all I want to see. Weight be on point, performance be on point, and then we can start really talking about this guy seriously again.
Thank you, Noah. You literally took the words out of my mouth as I was going to say them, so I'm just going to shut up.
That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the MMA Weekend Preview. Give us your thoughts on these fights, any predictions that you may have, and we'll be joining you back here again on Monday. We will have a regional showcase.
That's right.
It is LFA 119, I believe, is this week. Right. So we'll have that to you give that to you on Sunday along with the recap. But until then, Dominic, tell the good people where they can find you on social media.
Find me on Twitter, on Instagram at dslee14. More importantly, go follow, go engage, go interact with the show on Twitter, on Instagram at BAJ_MMA podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, fights are back. Enjoy them this weekend.
For me, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram at ntbaker_. If you go to my bio on Twitter or Instagram, there is a link that will take you to a link tree, which will present you a list of links to all the platforms the podcast is on, along with social media platforms. So that includes...
It's not limited to...
the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube channel, and Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. It's all on there. And there's a couple links for today's sponsor, Anchor.
Shout out
Anchor. First one, leaving a voice message. Please do it, people. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Any questions you may have, we'll feature it on the show. Also, there's a link on there if you want to become a supporter of the podcast. Any support would be appreciated. But that's it. We're out, and we're going to see y'all on Monday.